All right, second video, distance formula, which you may or may not remember. Quick intro, what's going on with the distance formula? Let's forget about the distance formula really quick. If I have a right triangle like this, I think most people will remember something has to do with a guy called Pythagoras, the Pythagorean theorem, right? And what that says is that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The distance formula is incredibly related because the distance formula talks about how do I find the distance between 2 points? Okay, well, we can kind of make a little triangle right here, like so. And then the distance is that hypotenuse. The distance is just the c value. Okay, so we have to find this length. This is our a value. Well, this length is just going to be how far apart are their x coordinates. This length right here is how far apart are their y coordinates. And you essentially turn this into into Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so if this is the point x1, x2, and this is the point, let's not do that. How about x1, y1? Let's have the y coordinate be labeled y. And this over here could maybe be x2, y2. Well, the difference between x1 and x2, this length, the difference between y1 and y2 is this length. And we just square those and we get what's known as the distance formula. So here it is all out for you between 2 points, x1, y1 and x2, y2. And what it is that the distance is the square root. And again, we need the square root because the distance is the c value. We have to square root both sides. Something squared plus something else squared. Okay, a squared plus b squared. But again, this a value is just the difference between the x's. A lot of times we write x2 minus x1 right there. And the b value right here is just the difference between the y's. That's going to be y2 minus y1, just like so. Okay, and if you ever forget the distance formula, because you will have to know it, if you ever forget the distance formula, try to think back to Pythagorean theorem and make your way in that aspect. It might help, it might not help, but really, in general, if you can understand where something comes from, it's easier to remember it, okay? So, we'll be using that for these problems. Oh, oops. I didn't mention in the first video, you were supposed to do numbers 6 through 16 even, and number 28. And specifically, I wanted to mention some of these later ones that solve for y means get y by itself, okay? I'll try to make a note to you on Canvas about that. Anyway, so here is what we're going to use for these chunks of problems. Move on to example 2. So find the distance between, and again, I really love shorthand. This is my shorthand for between. Find the distance between the points 1, -2 and -1, -4. So a lot of times what really helps is if you label what everything's going to be. This is our first x, so x1. This is our first y, that's y1. Second x, x2. Second y, y2. And it doesn't matter which one you call 1 and which one you call 2. Okay? Because when you square this, if it's negative, it just becomes positive anyway. It doesn't matter which one you call which one, just be consistent. If this is x1, this has to be y1. Okay? So now let's just plug it in. D equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And you might say, whoa, Jason, what are you doing? You just wrote down the formula again. That's on purpose, okay? And the idea is every time you're using a formula, if you write it down, you get some really nice advantages. Advantage number 1, writing it down, muscle memory, helps you remember the formula. Advantage number 2, it is much easier to plug things in when you are plugging them in right above or right below where you wrote it. So x2, that's -1. Minus x1, that's +1 squared. Plus y2, we just said that was -4. Minus y1, y1's -2, so we're minusing a -2. I like to add another parenthesis so we can just kind of see what's going on here. And when we subtract a negative, it's the same as adding a positive. Okay? We have -1 minus 1. It's -2. -4 plus 2, that's also -2. Where -2, that's -2 times -2 is +4. If you're typing this onto your calculator, by the way, -2 squared, don't type that onto your calculator. If you type it into your calculator, you need the parentheses so that it correctly gives you the value of +4. Watch out for that, okay? Don't do this. Parentheses are very important. We get 4 plus, again, -2 squared is going to be another 4. That's going to give us a square root of 8. And you might say we're done. And you're mostly done. But remember back to your earlier classes, we should simplify this, okay? Simplifying radicals can be a big headache. So if you have trouble with simplifying this step, reach out to me, okay? Reach out to me on email, Canvas, Slack, whatever, okay? And I can help you with this, all right? The idea is that we want to find a perfect square and split things up. So because 4 is a perfect square, it's 2 squared, we can split this up into factors of 4 and 2. And now that we can separate it, the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, which is nice because we know that the square root of 4 simplifies to 2. So this is how the square root of 8 simplifies. And if you truly want to be an A+ math student, which I'm sure many of you want to, you'll include the word units after this. You would use feet, inches, miles, depending on what the problem gives you. But if it didn't give us anything, we usually just write units. But you don't have to do that. I will not be giving points for that. This is a perfectly good answer. All right. And even this is like 4 out of 5 points, 9 out of 10 points, right? Simplifying this last step is important and can be tricky. So again, if you're unsure about anything in this class, always reach out to me. Email, Slack, Canvas, they're all great tools. All right. And I'm usually pretty quick with my response times. And that's the second video. So you should be ready right now to do problems 18 and 20. Only 2 of these. All right. All right. Until the next one.